Do you need to water a worm bin? Chances are you're already doing it without even thinking about it. We're going to cover that today on this short episode of Coffee and Compost. My name is Steve Churchill, and I own the Urban Worm Company. One of the most common mistakes a new vermicomposter will make is running their worm bin way too wet. This causes stinky anaerobic conditions. It also causes a difficult harvest, whether you're using something really simple like a Rubbermaid bin, or a commercial worm bin like one of the stackable systems, or a continuous flow bin like the Urban Worm Bag. Your worm bin should only be about 70% water. This is the amount of water you would have if you squeezed some of your vermicompost as tightly as possible and got 1 to 2 drops of water that sort of squeezed between your knuckles. But that fruit and vegetable waste, it's more like 85%. And in the case of fruits and vegetables like cucumbers, zucchinis, tomatoes, and of course watermelon, that number rises to 95%. And of those fruits and veggies that I just mentioned, would you believe that watermelon has the least water of all of them? This is because that water is bound up in the cell walls of that food waste. And as that food waste breaks down, thanks to the bacteria and thanks to the worms, that water gets released from the cell walls into your vermicompost. And if you're adding that food waste without adding dry bedding, and I normally recommend 2 times the volume of dry bedding to the volume of food waste, then you are going to have a slowly increasing moisture content in your vermicompost. But none of this means that you don't need to add water to your worm bin. In my case, I use a lot of coffee grounds and banana peels, and that's the bulk of what goes into my worm bin when it comes to food waste. And those two things have relatively low levels of water content. In fact, coffee grounds can really dry out a worm bin if you don't add water. Whether you need to water your bin also depends on whether it's sort of cold where you live. So cold air holds less water, holds less moisture than warm air. So in the winter months like it is right now, the ambient air around my worm bin is dry, and so that tends to draw moisture away from my bin. The other thing too is if it is cold and you are heating the vermicompost directly or heating the air around it, that's also going to have a drying effect, so you may need to add water for those two factors as well. So personally, I have to add water to my bin, but I'm careful about how I do it. Firstly, I spray and not pour water into my bin. I spray it on a mist setting using just a regular spray bottle. If you pour water into a bin, what's going to happen is you're adding too much water at one time. That water is going to just drain to the bottom. The vermicompost is not going to have a chance to fully absorb it before it makes its way to the bottom of your bin. The other thing is I make sure that I do frequent but smaller applications rather than less frequent but larger applications of water. Again, just like you don't pour a whole lot of water into a bin, if you add too much water to your vermicompost at one time, then it's just not going to be able to be absorbed by the vermicompost. You might also consider letting your water, which is likely chlorinated, off gas for a few days before you add it to your vermicompost. What this does is it allows that chlorine that's in the water to kind of off gas and get out of there before you add it to your worm bin. Personally, I don't do this. It's not because I like chlorine, but it's just because I'm lazy. All right, guys, having a wet worm bin is actually one of the most common mistakes a vermicomposter can make. I created a handy little PDF that you might be interested in reading today. It's going to detail for you the 6 most common mistakes that I see vermicomposters make. It's a quick, easy read. I think you'll like it. If you click this button above my left shoulder, you can sign up and get that guide immediately. And I'll see you on the next episode of Coffee and Compost.